The Martinez family's annual Christmas dinner was in full swing at my cousin Marcus's newly renovated mansion, a mansion he'd proudly bought using a loan from my bank, though he had no idea. I parked my 5-year-old Honda Civic between his gleaming Maserati and my sister Isabella's Range Rover, already bracing for the comments I knew were coming. I smoothed my simple blue dress, a custom Versace they'd assume was a discount find, and glanced at my old iPhone. A message from my bank's CFO flashed on the screen. The Martinez family's loan payments were now officially in default. "Oh, look, Daniela still hasn't upgraded her life." Isabella's voice rang out across the driveway. She stood there with our other cousins, all draped in obvious designer labels, flaunting their supposed success. "Some people just don't understand ambition," Marcus called out, twirling his car keys dramatically. "Still at that tiny bank, Danny," he added, smirking. If only they knew that tiny bank was just a branch of Rivera Financial Group, my privately owned banking empire worth billions. Their mortgages, business loans, and personal credit lines, all ultimately tied to me. "It pays the bills," I said softly, gripping my worn leather bag, a bag holding more in net worth and power than all of their assets combined. "Barely, judging by that dress," Aunt Carmen sniffed, her eyes sweeping over me. "Isabella just closed another real estate deal," she continued proudly, $5 million in commissions this month alone. I forced a polite smile, fully aware that Isabella's real estate empire was financed by loans from my bank, loans that were teetering on collapse thanks to her reckless spending. "Congrats, Bella," I said, accepting a glass of champagne. I noticed the label. It came from my private vineyard in France. They probably thought it was their ultimate luxury purchase. "This," Isabella waved around Marcus's mansion, "is what success looks like, little sister. Some people just don't get it." My phone buzzed again. Asset assessment complete. Martinez family exposure, $47 million. Awaiting your instruction on defaults. Speaking of business, Marcus threw an arm around his wife. "We're expanding. Just got major funding for 3 new developments." I nodded, fully aware of how fragile that funding really was. My team had flagged his projects for urgent review weeks ago. "The market's booming," Isabella chimed in. "We're partnering on a new luxury condo project, going to transform the city skyline." The same project my bank had declined last week. They'd find out tomorrow when their secured funding mysteriously fell through. "Still using that old phone?" Cousin Diana laughed, brandishing her latest iPhone. "There's this thing called upgrading, Danny. You should try it." I looked down at my device, my custom, ultra-secure phone controlling billions in assets. "It makes calls," I replied lightly. "That's the problem with banking." Marcus shook his head. "No vision. While we're building legacies, you're stuck counting pennies." If only he knew his entire legacy existed at my bank's mercy. "Not everyone's meant for greatness," Aunt Carmen sighed theatrically. "Some people just stay small." My phone buzzed again, this time, the alert I had been waiting for: Marcus's business account balance insufficient for the upcoming payment. "Excuse me," I said, rising from my chair. "Probably her boss making her work late again." Isabella snickered. "She just doesn't get it." I stepped into the hall, glancing back at them through the window, watching them toast to their illusions of success, all financed by me. "MS. Rivera," my CFO's voice came through urgently. "The Martinez holdings have officially triggered default protocols. Proceed with collections." I smiled, remembering every family dinner where they'd mocked my small job. "Yes," I said calmly. "It's time they learned who really runs their empires." The Martinez family dinner erupted into chaos as phones across the room started buzzing in unison. From the hallway, I watched their confident, smug expressions twist into horror as they read their notifications. "This has to be a mistake," Marcus stammered, furiously tapping at his phone. "The bank says our business account is frozen." Isabella's perfectly glossed lips parted in shock as she scanned her own screen. "My development fund, they're calling in all the loans, immediately." I leaned casually against the doorframe, scrolling through my outdated phone as years of careful planning finally paid off. Rivera Financial Group had just triggered default proceedings on every Martinez family venture at once. "Everyone calm down," Aunt Carmen ordered, though her voice wavered. "Marcus, call your banking contact." "He's not answering," Marcus said, his face draining of color. "No one is answering." "Of course not," I had already ordered all Rivera Financial staff to forward every Martinez family inquiry directly to the one person they'd never dared to imagine, me. Isabella, Aunt Carmen snapped. You have contacts, use them. I can't, Isabella whispered, her hand trembling. Even my personal accounts are frozen. I stepped into the dining room slowly, savoring the sight of their empire cracking in real time. Another buzz on my phone, Martinez Development Corp. Assets secured. Isabella Rivera Real Estate Holdings frozen. Marcus Martinez personal accounts flagged for audit. This can't be happening, Marcus muttered, pacing, his expensive shoes squeaking against the marble floor. Everything was structured perfectly. Our loans were secure. Were they? I asked quietly, stepping closer, or were they just a web of inflated valuations and creative accounting? Their heads snapped toward me, finally remembering the relative they'd dismissed as the small bank employee. Daniela, Isabella's voice softened, desperate now, you work in banking, please, you can help us, make a call? I set my champagne glass down carefully. Actually, I already have all the information I need. Marcus's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? I pulled out my old phone, the one they'd ridiculed moments ago, and opened my secure banking app. The executive dashboard of Rivera Financial Group glowed back at me, displaying the entire web of their crumbling fortunes. Rivera Financial Group, I began, holds the majority of your loans. The same bank you all thought was too small to matter. The same bank that's now calling in its debts. Aunt Carmen's face turned ghostly pale. Rivera Financial, but that's one of the biggest private banks in the country. The owner is some genius who stayed completely anonymous. I finished her sentence calmly. Yes, it's amazing what people don't notice when they're too busy looking down on someone. Silence blanketed the room. Isabella reached for the table, nearly collapsing, her diamond bracelet glinting, the same bracelet she bought on a credit line from my bank. No, Marcus whispered, his voice barely audible, that's impossible. I smiled, thinking of every dinner where they mocked my small job. In banking, Marcus, everything is possible, especially when you're too arrogant to read the fine print. My phone buzzed again. MS. Rivera, media outlets are requesting a statement on the Martinez family asset freeze. How should we proceed? Around me, the room had transformed from a display of showy wealth into a scene of panicked desperation. Marcus sat slumped in his imported Italian chair, his Rolex-clad wrist trembling as he refreshed his banking app again and again. Isabella staggered back and forth, her Louboutins tapping anxiously across the floor she'd soon lose. Let me understand this. Aunt Carmen finally spoke, her voice trembling. You own Rivera Financial Group? Founded it 7 years ago, I confirmed, showing them the full portfolio on my phone, right after you all convinced the family trust manager that I was too irresponsible to handle my inheritance. We were trying to protect you, Isabella pleaded weakly. No, I corrected, my voice cold. You were protecting yourselves. You used my inheritance to fund your empires, leaving me with scraps. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Marcus shot to his feet, his face contorted with rage. This is illegal. You can't just freeze our assets, Marcus shouted, his voice cracking. Actually, I can, I replied calmly. Section 7, 3 of your loan agreements, the fine print you were all too busy flaunting your wealth to read, grants Rivera Financial full discretion in cases of misrepresented assets. I smiled slightly, like, for example, claiming your developments were fully pre-sold when they were only 30% committed. Marcus's face turned ashen. Or Isabella, I continued, turning to her, using the same properties as collateral for multiple loans. Did you really think no one would notice? I'll call my lawyers, Aunt Carmen declared, frantically grabbing her phone. The ones you pay with credit lines from my bank? I asked innocently. Those accounts were frozen 10 minutes ago. My phone buzzed again, media alerted to Martinez family financial irregularities, major outlets requesting statements. You've destroyed us, Isabella whispered, her mascara streaking down her cheeks. No, Bella, you destroyed yourselves. I'm simply collecting what's owed. I stood, straightening my cheap dress. However, Rivera Financial is prepared to offer you a restructuring option, one that might preserve what's left of the Martinez name. Marcus's eyes narrowed. What's the catch? Complete financial transparency, independent auditors, and new management for every Martinez family business, I said, handing out folders, and you'll all need to find new housing. Your properties are being reclaimed as collateral. This mansion is my home, Marcus protested, voice trembling. This mansion belongs to my bank, I corrected coolly, just like Isabella's penthouse, Aunt Carmen's vacation villas, and every other asset you leveraged to keep your little charade alive. My phone lit up again, breaking, Rivera Financial initiates major asset recovery. Martinez family empire collapses overnight. You can't do this to family, Aunt Carmen pleaded, her voice breaking. Family? I laughed softly, like when you told everyone I was a teller because I couldn't handle real business, or when Isabella spread rumors that I was living off a trust fund because I couldn't make it on my own. I walked to the window, staring at their luxury cars lined up in the driveway, every one financed by my bank. While you paraded around in borrowed success, I built something real, something lasting. What do you want from us? Isabella sobbed. What I've always wanted, I said, turning to face them, acknowledgement, respect, and about $47 million in overdue loans. You have until tomorrow morning to sign the restructuring agreements, I added. After that, everything goes to public auction. The next hour unraveled in a blur of tears, frantic calls to disconnected lines of credit, and desperate bargaining. I watched quietly from my father's old study, the same study where they'd once decided I wasn't worthy of my inheritance. By midnight, I stood in my real office, the entire top floor of Rivera Financial's headquarters. The city lights shimmered below, a bright contrast to the darkness swallowing the Martinez family's empire. The papers are ready for tomorrow, my assistant reported. We've also arranged temporary housing for the family members being displaced, in that old apartment complex they used to mock you for living in. I raised an eyebrow, amused. The very same one? Yes, my assistant replied, though now, you own the entire building. I smiled, picking up my outdated phone, the same device they'd ridiculed, now a silent witness to their collapse. Messages flooded in, threats, pleas, apologies, all too late. One from Isabella stood out. I finally understand why you kept driving that old car and wearing simple clothes. You were building something real while we were just pretending. The next morning, I entered Rivera Financial's main conference room. My family sat waiting to sign their new agreements. Gone were the designer outfits and proud smirks, replaced by discount store clothes and defeated expressions. Before we begin, I said, my voice steady, I want to thank you all. Your mockery taught me a priceless lesson. True power doesn't need to scream. Real success doesn't wear flashy labels or park in front of a mansion. I took my seat at the head of the table, smoothing down my now unmistakably expensive dress. Sometimes, I continued, lifting my old phone, success looks like an outdated phone in the hands of someone who knows exactly when to use it, because the best revenge isn't showing people what they missed, it's letting them discover it themselves, one frozen account at a time.